Hey, it's Mike Harris with Cribstone Strategic Macro. You've heard a ton of postmortems on the Democratic Party failure. I'm going to add my 2 cents. Simple argument: the Democratic Party is not democratic enough. Since 2008, they have tried to impose their candidate on the Democratic primary electorate. It was Hillary's turn. Obama proved a spoiler. In 2016, Hillary's turn again. Okay, let's have Bernie as the facade competition, but not a real deep competitive field. In the end, he almost spoiled. Hillary wasn't stress tested enough. She still had her negatives, and she goes in and obviously facilitates the Trump victory. In 2020, we started with a broad, robust primary process, but they panicked and chose Biden quite quickly. In the end, that was a good decision because he was an antidote to Trump and he appealed to swing voters. But it still was ultimately something that was a little bit top down. And now we get to 2024, same thing again. Obviously, I don't know why in the world people like Nancy Pelosi, who now complained that Biden should have dropped out earlier, didn't raise their voice earlier. But I think it's just because of that perception that they want to control the process rather than outsource it to, in that case, even at the late stage, the delegates associated with the Democratic Party, which would have been entirely credible to have a UK conservative-like process where you quickly whittle through the field and then have a vote. That would have been very, very easy to do. But they don't respect that. They want to go ahead and impose people on us. And that's why we end up with choices that haven't been stress tested by a robust primary process. Now, Kamala might have been a good candidate. She might have actually done okay in the primary process, debatable. But she might have actually been a centrist. But we were in a world where did the Democrats just wake up to the reality that incumbency was a liability? Why do you choose someone who's basically part of that incumbency? And then secondly, when you do, why do you choose a VP that just doubles down on the messaging associated with that, as opposed to someone who is an endorsement for Kamala and proving the fact she's a centrist? And that means a governor, a Democratic governor from a red state. It means a senator who is a little bit more conservative on some of the key issues that everyone is focusing on. Or God forbid, it means a Republican, not someone who's been vilified by Trump like Cheney, who basically brings a liability when you bring her into the equation, but someone who's respected as a Republican, and it ends up being a strong endorsement that Kamala's a centrist. So the Democrats have to learn from these mistakes they've made. Importantly, the Turkish opposition made the exact same mistake, and so the writing was on the wall here. They thought they were going to beat Erdogan in 2023. They had an awesome coalition of religious parties, of former prime ministers, of former economy ministers, of centrist parties, of nationalist parties, of leftist parties. And what did we end up with? We ended up with a candidate that reflected the secular historic elite. And that was a terrible choice, because any socially conservative Turk who was frustrated with Erdogan, just like those Republicans that were frustrated with Trump, didn't have enough trust in the alternative, so they stuck with Erdogan. Erdogan's competitors got 48% of the vote. The same thing they got in the previous 2 presidential elections. You have a pulse, you roll out of bed, you get that vote. I personally think Kamala, anyone else except for perhaps Biden, would have gotten the exact same result that Kamala got just by rolling out of bed. The message is you must take your base for granted. When you're in a normal election, not necessarily, because people can be flexible, but in a polarized election, when you're going against a strong man like this, you actually have to try and lure some of those swing voters who are frustrated by the strong man, but you know your base is going to be there because your base hates the strong man. So someone who is upset about the abortion trajectory in the United States in terms of the restrictions, they were going to vote for Kamala no matter what. Don't go focusing on that. Focus on the swing voter and issues that matter to them. It sounds like you're giving up a little bit of power, but practically, if it's an existential threat to democracy, you have to be willing to do that. You treat vice presidential choices or your candidate choice more like a coalition, and you don't just think of this as, hey, this is our chance to regain power because that strong man is gone off the rails a bit. You take that approach, and it ends up being incredibly, incredibly costly when you get it wrong. So the Democrats simply have to learn, trust the primary process, and when you are running against someone like Trump next time in 2028, make sure the VP is not your traditional state demographic focused choice. Make sure it's someone that crosses the aisle and sends a strong endorsement for the presidential candidate, that this is someone you swing voters can actually trust.